All right, hello everybody. We're joined today with Dr. Barry. He's the head of the kinesiology department here at Saginaw Valley, and he also runs the AT department.
I'm Julian Espinal, and
I'm Scott Herndon.
this is David Barry, and we'll start off by asking, what's your background in athletic training?
So my background in athletic training, I have been an athletic trainer for a really long time, well over 25 years at this point. I went through what they called an apprenticeship program at the time, meaning that I just basically went and I got a bachelor's degree in something, which happened to be health education, and I did athletic training as a added component to my schooling. And I had to meet certain requirements for academic courses that I had to have, plus I had to have 1,500 hours, I believe, of practical experience. By the time I graduated from my university, I think I had well over 2,500 hours, so I basically lived in the athletic training room when I was a student.
Awesome. So, what work did you do with athletes when treating them and helping them in their recovery processes?
And really, the interventions that were applied were really just dependent upon what the pathology, what was wrong with them. It could be everything from some level of manual therapy to some sort of physical agent such as ultrasound or electrical stimulation to manage pain. And when I worked as an athletic trainer at a very small NIA Division II school. We actually had no equipment, so everything that we did was based upon body weight and TheraBands. And I actually rehabbed 4 ACLs back to return to play with just that. And I'll back up. I did have one. I had a universal machine and a pool. And so between the universal machine, the pool, TheraBands, and some know-how and knowledge, we got 4 kids back to return to play after suffering a torn ACL.
Wow, that's impressive. With that little equipment.
It was a good time.
Pool resistance work, mostly?
We did a lot of pool. Once they were ready to be able to get into it, and then we just did a lot of band work. You'd be amazed what you can do with TheraBand if you actually put your mind to it. That and body weight. I think sometimes we forget that body weight is a very useful component for rehabilitation. We think that we have to use all kinds of equipment. You really don't. You don't need a lot of equipment to do rehabilitation. It's nice. It's an added feature. If you're working on, you got to think about what strength is relative to an injury, right? Is it developing strength to get them back to their functional level, or is it developing strength to get them to be able to perform better on a football field, right? Those are 2 different types of strength. The goal with rehabilitation is to get them back to what their functional level was, not to get them back to being able to bench 50 pounds more than what they had started. And so you don't always need that excessive equipment.
So what's add on to that, what's the process from getting to the functional, and then what's the switch from do you still play a role in that, of getting to that functional level and then back to the football field? Or?
Well, I mean, I think so when we start talking about functional activities, I think functional can be defined a couple different ways. And so functional can be, I don't want to say this. So functional, I think we look at functional a couple different ways. One, it can be that getting people back to being able to do activities that are, I'm gonna call them the activities of daily living, the ADLs.
Yeah.
But that's still functional, right? Being able to get up, to go to the bathroom, to go up and down the stairs without having any deficit in, say, your gait pattern, so your walking pattern, being able to lift up the grocery bag without any deficits or changes. And that's one type of function. And of course, there's a function to get them back out onto the field. And I think a lot of times that is more along the lines of what we refer to as sports-specific activities. It's sometimes it's just trial and error. Sometimes it is just a matter of, I know that we can go in this nice linear pattern and we're going straight really well. All right, now let's try to go side to side, or let's try now to integrate the side to side pattern, something that's more applicable to a sport, which activity, which might be, might be football, it might be, karaoke, or maybe it's your alignment and you need to work on that alignment coming off, doing some sort of explosive activity. Not just going to start with the explosive activity, but you're going to work to make sure that they have the motion, they have the movement to get up, and then to get up into that right position, and then from there, then you start to transition into the actual doing it. And then you get creative, and you start to throw things in front of the person to actually, challenge them more, and then you make that transition into the field. There's not always a great time period or great indicator to say that we're going from A to B to C. A lot of times A and B merge together, C and D merge together, E and F merge together.
Yeah.
This is always an overlap between the different stages or phases of rehabilitation that a person goes through. It's just like tissue healing, right? We teach tissue healing in a linear fashion. This is the first step, this is the second step, this is the third step, this is the first phase, second phase, third phase. And we talk about them as individual components. They're not individual, they overlap. As we go into the initial phase of an injury and we start to get swelling at an extremity, and limited range of motion in an extremity, we're already starting to go to that second phase, which we talk about as being what's known as proliferation. We're already starting to get new new fibroblastic cells to come into the area. It's just a matter of how well we clean up the area in stage 1 that determines then how quickly stage 2 can actually start. But stage 2 is ready to go. We just got to get rid of all the junk from stage 1. So, and rehab is all about overlap. It's all about kind of knowing when to push harder and when to back off. That's what we generally use, like things like pain and swelling as our indicators. If it hurts more, if it swells more, we probably did too much.
Right.
Yeah. It's not as clear cut. I'm sorry to cut you off.
And do you think like it's tougher working with athletes, just because you have to inform like coaches and stuff like that about what's going on in the recovery process and like how to not over push an athlete?
I think it's a matter of what type of relationship you've built with the individual. There can be some coaches that are, they want everything in writing. Some of them want it electronically. Some of them want it orally. You have to know what to disclose, how to disclose in a way that's meaningful for the coach. That's going to also protect the athlete at the same point in time. And then, it's trying to make sure that the coach sticks then to what that policy was for an agreement. So, for example, today they're only going to go 50%. If they got to run, they're only going to do 50% of the speed. It's hard. It's sometimes difficult to gauge. It's sometimes difficult to make sure that athlete is only working at that percentage. It's a matter of again, relationships, and if you have the advantage of having somebody work full time with an athletic team, one of the nice things about having a full-time athletic trainer with a particular team, that's all they do is this team for that season. This is that when you go into that, you go into your initial practice setting, for example, you come in, everybody, they get together, they do their initial team bonding or whatever they do. They might do some warm-up activities, and as long as the student athlete is at that point where they can do some of those warm-ups, it's great. But when then we start getting into the training specific activities for the day, that's where then the athletic trainer then pulls them off to the side, and she or they then spend that next hour and a half working with those individuals on whatever skills are necessary from a functional perspective or sports specific perspective to get them ready so that they can then make that transition back to working with the team. The team comes back together, they come back together. The coach doesn't have to worry about what to do with them because they have a healthcare provider there who's able to take them off to the side to do their thing. But that's hard when you're at it's only possible when you're at a Division I institution where you have the resources to have an athletic trainer assigned with every single team. When you're in a Division II or III school, it's a little bit more complicated to be able to do that because they may have to be splitting their time between 2 or 3 different teams. And of course, at the high school level, it's even worse because you have one person there who's a central repository for health, but if there's 9 games going on, that one person can't be in 9 places. So this gets challenging.
What are the certifications of being an athletic trainer, and how could I, as a young athletic trainer, get those certifications?
Sure. So the means to be eligible to sit for what's called the Board of Certification Exam, which is the national certifying body for athletic trainers, requires that you graduate from an accredited athletic training program through what's called CATE, which is the Commission on Accreditation of Athletic Training Education. And all those programs now are what we call entry-level graduate programs, so they're all at the master's level. And so in order to be eligible for one of those programs, you have to have graduated from a BS program, Generally, they're not always picky what the BS is in, or the BA is in, as long as you've met the entry-level requirements, which for a lot of schools is anatomy, physiology, some chemistry, some physics, exercise physiology, biomechanics, and then a handful of other prerequisite requirements. I think statistics might be one. Statistics actually is one.
Biostatistics, I believe.
Well, but yeah, about
It's one of those.
statistics.
Yeah.
As long as you've done some basic stats, you're good usually. And then some schools require what is it, introduction to public health. And then once you do that, once you meet those requirements, usually most of those programs have a minimal minimal entry GPA of 3.0. So as long as you graduated with a 3.0 in your degree, you met the requirements, you make your application. You go in, it's usually a 2.5 year program with varied experiences, just depending upon what institution you end up at. Again, they have everybody has to teach the same core content, so they have to teach the same standards across all institutions. Just a matter of, again, I think the environment, the athletics that you might end up participating in, some of the rehab sites that you might be at, and then again, I think for all institutions, what's that feel that you have? It's that personal connection you have with that particular facility, which is, I think, probably the most important feature at an institution.
So do you have any advice out there for any young ATs getting into the field? What would be your biggest piece of advice?
The biggest piece of advice would just be to make sure you do well academically and to make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. So know really that this is a career that you want, and that's the case for all careers. It's the worst thing you can do is get into a career and then realize 5 years later it's not what you want to do. And that's hard. It's hard to know that sometimes, but if you don't have a good feel for what you're doing, you may want to rethink that career. You have to, as I remind people, you got to work for 50 years of your life, just about. So you must be happy for 50 years versus being miserable for 50 years.
Right.
So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for meeting with us, Dr. Berry.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good.